And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 141st edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 533rd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud Banner Moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Monday when Indiana announced its two captains for the upcoming season, selected by a vote of the players, senior Devonte Green and junior Al Durham. It's obviously great news that Devonte earned the captain designation just a handful of months after being suspended for, quote, not meeting the standards expected of an IU player, unquote. It's an important sign that he is entering his final go-around at Indiana with the right mindset and ready to make the most of it, which, given how much he is being counted on this season, is absolutely essential. But I want to focus on Al being named captain because I think it could have even bigger implications for the future of the program beyond this season. Unlike Devonte, Al will be back next season. At least that's how things currently project right now. And that means Indiana will enter the 2020-21 season led by a senior guard who will have 3 years of extensive playing experience and 1 year of official leadership under his belt. That's important. Look at the recent history of IU basketball. The teams that combine talented, well-constructed rosters with experienced internal leadership, 2012, 2013, and 2016, lived up to the expectations we all have for IU basketball teams. The teams that had poorly constructed rosters and that struggled with internal leadership fell short of our expectations. Given how things project right now, the 2020-21 roster is tantalizing. Rob Finney should be one of the Big Ten's best point guards. Trace Jackson-Davis will likely have matured into a force on the front line. Jerome Hunter could be one of the conference's most versatile scorers, knock on wood. And the rest of the roster will be filled with a useful mix of capable veterans and talented youngsters. What will determine this projected roster's success? What so often determines the success of talented college sports teams? The internal leadership. And this is where Al will play such a key role, like Jordan Hulls and Colin Hartman before him. He may not be the most talented player on the roster, but he can be the glue that helps hold it together through all the ups and downs of a long season. And Al has already displayed natural leadership abilities during his first 2 seasons. He's a tireless worker. He's as enthusiastic about being a Hoosier as any guy you'll find. And now, after 2 years of leading mostly by example, he seems ready to embrace the role of vocal leader as an upperclassman and captain. And next season, he projects to be buoyed by Joey Brunk in his second year with the program, along with the then-veteran Finney, whose role as point guard and probable minutes leader will make him a leader whether he wants to be or not. Fortunately, it seems like he does. Now, this forward-looking banner moment may make it seem like I'm writing off this upcoming season. I'm not, of course. Come on, you know me better than that. But I do think it's worth considering how important Al's leadership can be as a through line connecting this season and next season, which hopefully will represent the next 2 steps in the Archie Miller era at IU. First, getting back to the NCAA tournament this season, and then contending for a Big Ten title and playing into the second weekend and perhaps beyond next year. And it's not going to happen by accident or magic, and it won't happen as a result of this or that 5-star commitment. It will happen because Archie Miller effectively communicates his desire for what the culture of Indiana basketball should be, and then has enough players within the program who are willing to hold each other accountable to that vision. Al Durham is one of those players, and his leadership will play a pivotal role in Indiana resuming the success on the court that he, his teammates, his coaches, and all of us expect. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. Coach is off this week, presumably still recovering from his first attempt at handling the full suite of host duties on last week's show. And while he may have ended the night lamenting a few mistakes...
Yeah, I screwed up 2 things, though.
The bottom line is that he hosted a great discussion with Chronic Hoosier and Galen Clavio, and he also provided this gift of a drop, which you can be sure will keep on giving throughout the season.
You dumbass.
So kudos to you, Coach.
That's awesome.
On a great first night running the point.
Mic drop.
All right, so here with me tonight to my left, he is the Andy Reid of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati, the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and one of the world's most renowned and fun-loving bracketologists.
Well, it's been a fun week, Jerod. Let me tell you, this is fun. This kind of game is fun. This was fun. All right, well, this was fun.
He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
Well, I did have fun last Thursday night watching the Eagles win in Green Bay, so I just add that to the treasure trove of fun. For this week, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Al and Devonte and really hitting the backcourt pretty hard. The one thing I continue to be really intrigued by, Archie brought this up a bit more during his Big Ten Media Day comments, and it just this whole notion of IU really kind of playing through the post and playing inside, relying so much on the front court because that's where this team has arguably the most depth, and and so it's just interesting. It makes you wonder whether has Archie unlocked some kind of market inefficiency where now everybody's wanting to shoot threes and play more smaller guys and people on the perimeter, and now is he somehow on the cutting edge of swinging things back the other way, or is that just a function of what this team's personnel is? So just being able to watch how this team plays in that way, given the way that college basketball and professional basketball has really gone, is going to be really intriguing. We're not going to learn a lot about that at Hoosier Hysteria for sure. But it is interesting to just think about what a team like that may look like. And he talked a lot about, the pressure on guys like Jerome and Demizi in the 4 scholarship guards to really be able to make shots and open things up so that doesn't become an issue on the offensive end. And I think the other thing to really watch is how well these guys can play on the defensive end. They're sure to be chasing around smaller players in some cases, and what that really looks like. So it's something that, for those of us who watch a lot of college basketball, is not really the kind of lineup composition and offensive philosophy it feels like that we've seen a whole lot of recently, but continues to talk a lot about more player movement and ball movement, maybe in contrast to some of the things that we saw last year for certain. So that to me is intriguing, and I think some of the storylines around the 2 captains that you talked about are things we'll get into here, but as you fast forward to try to figure out what this team's going to look like, whether they're effectively able to play with those bigger lineups is going to go a long way toward deciding what their fate's going to be.
And to my right, he is a senior writer at The Big Lead. He is on every athletic director's shot doctor shortlist, and he's now back from Italy, where he flew last week to surprise his mom for her birthday.
Held you in my womb for 9 months.
He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant this week?
Yeah, I'm still awful tired from that, since I'm also doing morning radio where I'm waking up at 3:30 in the morning. That was just a bad plan.
You probably have a really stuffed inbox too, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
It's hell being important. What are you going to do?
Yeah, right. I wanted to talk a little bit, actually, real quickly, because I think we all kind of know what's going on at Sports Illustrated today, and I think it's kind of sad to see such a great, a great publication I think we all were addicted to growing up, and see that they just let go of half their editorial staff today and are going to replace them with part-time writers and a patchwork group of contributors with quotes around it. And I think it's really sad day, because I think we all understand. I mean, you look at what something like The Athletic has done, and it still remains to be seen whether that's going to work long term, but I think most people feel pretty confident that it's doing very well. But it bothers me when people acquire these venerable publications and then somehow think that cutting the quality or cutting the full-time writers who make it great is somehow going to make the quality better. And I think that's really sad that we're seeing that happen to Sports Illustrated, which for so long has been such, at the forefront of sports. And we all currently, because of the show, work in sports media, and it's really sad to see things like all those podcasts on SI Now that are really good, and all the deep investigative reporting they do, and the things they've exposed in sports, and even just the insider stuff that you get from Sports Illustrated on a daily basis. You're going to see a lot of that go away because of some of the names of the people who got fired. I know there was at least one IU alum who was in the mix today who got removed. So everybody just keep your thoughts with those people, because they're going through a rough time right before the holidays start. A lot of people just lost their jobs. So we see it more and more in media as people try and adjust to the internet and stuff like that. And I just think that the model they're using at a lot of these sites to just, completely slash staff and then hope that cheaper labor is going to be the answer, when I think we all are, go to a place like Sports Illustrated for quality. We don't go for, clickbaity articles. So, we'll see how it works out. The guys who are in charge there do not have a long and distinguished positive track record, so I'm not hopeful. Anyway, so just thoughts with those people, because it's really a shame today to see so many good writers find themselves out of work.
It would have been an appropriate time to use the Andy drop. They'll let anybody write stuff online, but I don't want to make light of it, but unfortunately, that's kind of what they're doing, and it's a shame. I mean, if you're a sports fan, it's devastating to see what's happened to Sports Illustrated. I'm glad you addressed
Really
that, because I mean, I think we all grew up on that magazine. I still get it. I still read it every time it comes, the print edition. It's
I mean, no, I used to
shame.
wait. I used to sit and wait near the mailbox for that to come every week so I could read it and just devour everything in it, and how many great writers they had there. And now, it's gotten a lot thinner over the years, and I realized that maybe the magazine aspect of it didn't work. But I mean, how often am I on SI.com online? I mean, and looking at SI podcasts and stuff like that. It's, there's ways to make money in this business. You just have to be smart about it. And I feel really sad that the guys in charge are handling it this way.
Agreed. All right, well, here's what we're going to talk about this week. We'll run through a few Hoosier headlines, and then we are going to discuss Indiana's newly minted captains in more depth, Al Durham and Devonte Green. And then, of course, as we always do, we will answer your questions. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. First, I do want to talk real quick about tickets. As you know, you have a lot of options when it comes to where you get your sports tickets, and this isn't an industry that is known for its growth, innovation, and customer friendliness. But with millions of live event tickets, let's try that again, and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves that there's a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets so that you can stop searching for the perfect seat and instead start enjoying it. Just look at the App Store. SeatGeek has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and the reason is because they deliver a better process for buying tickets. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, and then they rate each deal on a scale of 1 to 10 with a color-coded system to show the value. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced. Then they display the tickets on an interactive seat map so you can see right where they are. And every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence, like an Assembly Call listener who emailed me to let me know that he was using our promo code and picking up tickets for the IU Florida State game coming up in December, Ron. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone because it's by far the fastest and easiest way to find tickets. And, my family and I, we want concert tickets, baseball tickets, stuff other than basketball. That's what we use. And by the way, we are going to be up for the Purdue game this year. We've already decided that in February. So if you want to join us at that game, definitely look on SeatGeek to get your tickets.
Get a brother, get some coupons.
And best of all, SeatGeek will even give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. So download the SeatGeek app today and use the promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. I feel like that was a really shaky ad read, and one that I've done like 1,000 times. For some reason, I just couldn't get through it tonight. What are you going to do?
We all have off nights. It's fine.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Reading is hard. It's fine.
Yes, it is. Okay, so quickly, Hoosier headlines. Hoosier Hysteria is Saturday. Starts at 4 o'clock Eastern. Calbert Chaney is going to be honored, which is awesome because he's going into the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Otherwise, it sounds like the setup will be pretty much the same as last year. There'll be player intros, shooting contest, dunk contest, scrimmage. If you're not going to go live, you can stream it on BTN Plus. And yes, we will have a post-game show because we're insane like that. So as soon as the Hoosier Hysteria feed on BTN Plus ends, we will go live to recap it. Ryan, I think you're going to be there. Coach, I believe you're
I'm going to be there for at least a portion of it for sure.
Okay.
I'm going to try and make the whole thing, but at least I'll be there for the beginning for sure.
Cool. So
I'll be attending my third soccer game of the day already by that point. So
nice. You'll be in a great mood by then.
Well, it depends how the first two games go, really. We'll depend a lot on that.
Notable recruits, I believe Trey Kaufman will be there. I believe Christian Lander will be there. Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway will be there. So, obviously this is a recruiting event, so it'll be interesting to see what the feedback is that we get from those guys. So we'll talk more about Hoosier Hysteria after it happens on Saturday. Otherwise, in terms of headlines, Indiana handed out some awards. Obviously, the captains, Al and Devonte. The preseason Ironman Award went to Armand Franklin, which is really interesting, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Okay, so the Ironman Award, did we get a specific read on what that went to? I saw that they handed it to him, but I
don't remember exactly. Archie explained it a little bit. There's some kind of quantitative thing that went into it. It wasn't just like, hey, let's give Armand an award. Like they measure, something with different times that they're running and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So, but it was basically a recognition just of how hard he's worked. So I guess my question on that one, because I find that one really interesting that Armaan wins that. Andy, do you take that as a great sign about just the mindset and work ethic and maturity that he brings to campus? Or do you look at it and say, there wasn't a guy who's been around here for a few years who could have won that award and set the pace for the freshman? Because you kind of go either way with it.
Yeah, in the absence of true knowledge of what actually went into it, I listened to the same thing you did, where Archie kind of talked about, some of his times from different, running things and other, kind of cardio type things. I'm going to choose to see it as a positive for him. And I put that in the lens of, again, this team does not have a ton of depth in the backcourt. And so there's a lot that goes into being able to play in the Big Ten and play at IU and all of those things. And so this is not to say that a physical fitness award or whatever we want to call this is going to prepare Armaan Franklin for it. But I think it's good to see that he's adapted so quickly to the rigors of practice and the things that are going on with IU that he's able to do that. And I think that bodes well that if called upon, he could potentially be a contributor. And there are minutes to be had. And Archie mentioned that a couple of times where, they really like the depth of the team, but there's not, they've got who they have, and there are roles up for grabs that guys can really grasp onto. So I think it, if nothing else, from a work ethic and standpoint, speaks well of Armaan and a guy that we all view as a 4-year foundational type guy. I think that's a pretty good start. I mean, to be able to do that within your first couple months of being at college, I would say is pretty impressive. So I'll take the glass half full side of that.
And going back to what I said during the banner moment, I mean, that's a guy who projects to be one of those important leaders. I think Archie kind of talked about, one of the things now he's trying to work with Armaan is just talking more, being more vocal, but that's common for a freshman. But in terms of leadership by example, he's clearly got it. And so I think that's a great sign to see. Obviously, Big Ten Media Day was this week. Ryan, any big take? A lot of the stuff is stuff that we've heard before. I don't think there was really any breaking news, but was there anything that jumped out to you from what Archie said? And obviously, we're going to talk more about Devonte and Al, who were there with him in the next segment. But anything jump out from what Archie said?
No, I think that, the focus on being big, I think was really interesting. Especially because Archie was a guard, usually those guys want to make the team in their own image. And the fact that he's sort of talking about how, it's our strength that we're big and we can play inside, and, and also the focus on the wings and the opportunity that those guys who are wings have, and those bigger wings with, he specifically mentioned to me as Anderson, Jerome, Hunter, having an opportunity to really, help out this team. And I think Demezi's a guy who's kind of been forgotten this offseason a little bit, and rightfully so, because we didn't see much from him when he was on the floor last year. But again, a guy who we've heard some people say he has a real chance to be the guy who makes a big jump this year. So I think there was a lot of optimism about not only size, but the attacking the wings. But with Archie, you would think that, the big focus would be the backcourt, and it wasn't. And I think that's interesting. To me, that tells one of two things: that I think that means he's got some quiet confidence in the backcourt and doesn't need to really talk about it. While on the other end, he's really excited about the size they have, because they've been undersized a lot of his time at Indiana. And so now you've got waves of guys up front and in the front court. And the fact that he's getting asked about it and commenting about it on his own says something. I mean, Indiana's going to be big this year, and big and probably pretty athletic from the wing too. So it's going to be interesting to see how he deploys that group of guys and who gets, first dibs and second dibs and the ability to get in there and really mix it up.
Yeah,
I tend to think it's more the first, that he's got quiet confidence about the backcourt.
I agree. I think so too. That was really what my takeaway. But also, I think he's pretty excited about having that front court too.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought a couple of his comments just around, he alluded to, just having different people being able to step up and not being as reliant on, a couple guys being a little bit harder to game plan for. I think in that regard, I think everybody's natural reaction is to look around and try to figure out who's going to fill the scoring load of a Romeo and a Juwan. And I don't, you listen to him talk, and everybody kind of looks at each other, doesn't really have a great answer. And you kind of say Devonte by default and move on. But, his comments really, led me to believe that I don't know that he thinks one guy has to do that, which I think is hopefully encouraging. You're trying not to get caught up in the, complete and utter optimism of the offseason, as we often do. But I do think he feels like it's a really balanced roster with a lot of guys who can contribute on any given night. And he said, having a home game where 4 guys scoring double figures and being able to really be difficult to prepare for, and not letting defenses be able to focus in on 1 or 2 guys. I think that is probably music to people's ears a little bit, where, we'd come on shows last year and say everybody's kind of standing around waiting on somebody to make a play. I think this team isn't going to have that luxury. So whether out of necessity or whether by design, I think you're going to see a lot of different things offensively than what you did. And I think it's encouraging that he believes that so many guys can be able to step in and contribute, and to talk about it really being for a team that, really being a deep team. And you can kind of see it. He talked about how, so many new guys last year have now learned the ropes and able to pass that along. So that part to me is exciting, and he seems excited about the depth as well.
One question for you guys. Scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you that Al Durham was picked as one of the captains when it initially came out?
Surprised when it was announced, and then not surprised at all with about 5 minutes of reflection.
Yeah, no, I meant when it was announced. Like, were you surprised initially?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I figured it would be Devonte and Durham. I was a little bit surprised, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think,
and it's a player vote too. So I mean, it's not like Archie picked it.
Oh no. Just
to be clear, in case people don't know that,
I was pleasantly surprised. It was surprising to me. I thought it would be Devonte and Durham for sure. I thought maybe they might go with 3 and throw in a 3rd guy. Because we've seen that before, but that was surprising and positive we've heard all offseason how hard Al's working. So clearly he made an impression on his teammates.
I think you saw him try to do some of that from a leadership perspective last year. I recall shows where we would come on and say he was really trying to, I think when he really had a spark and was attacking the basket, I think everybody followed his lead a little bit. And some of the comments that Archie made was, he's a guy that nobody has anything bad to say about. I think he's just a guy who, based on work ethic, energy, all those kinds of things, really has respect to his teammates. So I was like you, Jerod, probably a little bit surprised at the beginning, but once you really thought about it and you kind of think back to how he was last year in situations where they needed somebody to, step up and provide some energy and leadership, you saw him try to do that and just really growing into that role.
It's been a good week for Joel and the Al Durham fan club. So hopefully that carries into the season. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, we're going to talk about Indiana's newly minted captains, Al Durham and Devonte Green. Each will have to step up his game in a big way for Indiana to go dancing. Do we think they're up to the task? We'll discuss that. Plus, I have a major announcement next here on the Assembly Call. All right.
Hey,
I got a note in the chat, Ryan, that your audio is much louder than everybody's, which I can see. I'll level it at the end. But Andy, can you turn your mic up just a tad? You were a little low when you came in, but we didn't really have time to go over it.
So I will say that my girlfriend Madeline's favorite player is by far it's Al Durham. She has loved him since the first game she watched. So like the Robert Johnson photo we got with Andy, we may have to make that happen in Bloomington. Okay. We'll be there.
I think we can do that.
If we have any connections.
I think we can do that. Joel just said that's why I value her opinion more than yours, Ryan.
Hey, I love Al too. What are you talking about?
I mean, like, is there anybody that doesn't just love Al?
I love the kid.
I mean, some people, like Joel, president of the fan club, but I mean, Al is just, that guy's a Hoosier through and through.
Since his freshman year, watching him play his first couple games, loved Al. Like, I think
do you remember why it was that everybody loved Al when he first played those first few games? There was a specific reason why everybody loved him.
Was he shooting floaters with his offhand?
It was that, but more than that, I don't think he turned the ball over like his first 3 or 4 games. And this was coming off all the turnover issues, and it was like, dear God, we have a guard who doesn't turn it over. This is amazing. That and then the floaters.
What I loved about Al is how his shot was kind of janky in high school. And they asked him, like, okay, so you're going to change your shot, to play guard in college. And he's like, I don't need to change my shot. And I was kind of like, I kind of like this guy.
He's got a little, like, kind of quiet.
He's got juice.
Not really cockiness, but, I mean, he's confident in himself. Oh, I like Al. I like him a lot.
I changed my mic. Is that any better? I turned it up a little bit. Notice anything or no?
I think so.
I can't hear it
out there listening.
I can't hear it, so...
You can't. You mean you can't?
I mean I can't hear the difference. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let us know in the chat if it's egregious. We'll do a more detailed sound check. I think it's probably okay, and I'll level it out before we post it. But hopefully it's all right. Okay. So quickly. Okay, you got a yes, Andy. So quickly to structure this segment, do you want to start with Devonte or Al?
Let's start with Devonte because we just had the article about him. We can talk about that.
Okay.
Because with him, there's meat to talk about. With Al, it's just kind of performance stuff.
Yeah, we'll see how much time we have because I'm not going to obviously read all these numbers here, but I do want to explain some of this.
Ryan loves it. Ryan loves it when you go heavy.
I just want to
stats.
try and put Ryan to sleep.
My favorite thing. Yeah.
I know.
By the way, very easy to put me to
big
sleep.
numbers guy right there. Yeah.
I'm working off like 4 hours. So
yeah. Andy, he had like 4,000 emails in his inbox too today.
Seriously.
So I mean, just the sheer.
I'm just, you know what, guys? While you talk numbers, I'm going to go through those. You mind? Clean it out.
Oh, so your email works with Zoom now? Gmail and Zoom.
It does. I told you 2 weeks ago.
I look forward to you finding the email with the link to the run sheet in it.
I actually
While you go through there.
I have it, and it is pulled up right now. Notice how I didn't ask.
That's true. He didn't ask.
I thought you asked for it before I got here since I was late.
No,
so
I did not. Just completely shut down Bottoms on that one.
98% of the time, Andy, that would have been
breaking your streak of 500 consecutive shows without being able to find it and asking for it in the chat.
Yes. Did I forward you the email, Ryan, where someone sent me an email suggesting that we need to be nicer to you?
Yeah. I always love getting those. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Their disdain makes me stronger.
The concept of that always just makes me laugh.
Like Samson's hair, it gives me power.
Oh, jeez.
I think it's pretty amazing that we've apparently given you a hard enough time that we've turned you into a sympathetic figure.
I know, right?
Whatsoever. That may be the greatest upset in the history of anything that we've done on the show.
People don't get the dynamic of the persona that I've created. They're just completely right over. I'm really nice in person.
The funny thing is you haven't really created a persona because in person you're exactly the same as you are on the show.
Well, it goes both ways. It informs my real life too.
Yeah.
It's a choice I've made.
Okay, so that segment went pretty long. That was 22 minutes.
Wow, it didn't seem that long.
Well, my banner moment was really long, and then I stumbled through the ad read. So
that was all. I had time to write an entire post while you were doing your.
I know I extended it. I added a few paragraphs there.
I appreciate it.
Okay, let's do this.
All right.
Enough tomfoolery for one break segment. Here we go.
This is Ethan Happ, and I never listen to the assembly call, especially the episodes that Ryan is on.
Thank you, Ethan. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcasts or watch those replays and see all the between segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jerod Morris, and I'm here with the original members of the band, Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, back again, getting some preseason warm-ups in here as we get ready for this very intriguing season that we have coming up. And guys, we talked in the first segment about how Al Durham and Devonte Green were named captains. So I want to, kind of dive into those guys a little bit and talk about each one. And let's start with Devonte, because, did you guys get a chance to read the Dustin Dopirak article in The Athletic about Devonte?
Nice work, Dustin, by the way.
Yeah, it was another really well done piece. And I think, you read that, you watch Devonte, how he carried himself, things he said at media day, and just you kind of hear some of the things that people are saying about him. He's voted as a captain, and it's easy to start really buying into it and to get excited about his senior season. And what really stood out to me was, discussing the suspension from last season. He basically said that it made him value more the role that he had at Indiana, and I don't think it's you look at the evidence and it matches that up, Andy, because after that happened last year, we know, he kind of came back a different guy. And, he was huge in that win at Michigan State. He ends up, finishing the season, those last 7 games, scoring 15-some points, really stepping it up. And, it's kind of been this weird offseason storyline where it's like, okay, Devonte's got the talent. He's going to be a senior. We saw it at the end of last year. He's going to be the go-to guy. There's a lot to get excited about, but it's like, everybody who's a fan of the team kind of stops before they fully embrace it because of some of the inconsistencies that we've seen. So, what are your thoughts now as we get closer and closer to the season? How confident are you about so much of this team's success this year riding on the shoulders of Devonte Green? Because I don't think that's hyperbole. I mean, there's a lot of how Indiana does this year is going to be based on the production and the consistency they get out of him.
Yeah. A couple of things struck me between the article and hearing Archie talk about him. One of the first things that Archie said when he was asked about, kind of what it said to him about Devonte being a captain or just kind of about him being named captain. And he went pretty quickly to maturity. And I think you see a lot of that in the article as Dustin kind of walked you through his career. And I think you do, again, it's easy to say this when you're sitting and listen to interviews and different things like that. But being able to, he certainly seems like a guy who has matured and kind of been through some things over his time at IU. And I think, the article gave a really good glimpse into, his really crisis of confidence or whatever you want to call it that he had over, various points of his career where, seemed like the first year, it's, was playing a kind of the role you'd expect a freshman to play and expecting to grow and not really moving on the trajectory that he wanted it to. And for somebody who, as you go back through some of his high school numbers and things like that, had nothing but success and was such a prolific scorer and, brother goes to the NBA. I think there's just a lot of pressures on him that, you probably do about it in retrospect. You're like, yeah, you should have seen that or you could have seen that. But just kind of listening to him talk, hearing some of the discussion about, I think Jeff Rabjohns even asked him about it at the media day about, how does a guy who scored this many points like have that go through those stretches where they just don't have that confidence. And I thought it was a really good look into him. And it seems like a guy who's able to put, failures or different things behind him a little bit quicker than maybe he was in his younger days, which to me kind of circles back to the maturity component of things.
Yeah. And as we've talked about, Ryan, ad nauseum this offseason, he seems like a guy that's finally at peace with his role. And a guy who, with this new coach, Archie Miller, that didn't recruit him, but that has had him for a couple years. And, you could tell when Archie first took over, like he saw something in Devonte. I remember him talking about, he's got a little city in his game. He's got that ability. And yet it just seems like they haven't been able to consistently be on the same page. It feels like they're entering this season on the same page. And I think that's so important. That's the biggest reason why I have so much confidence in the Devonte breakout this year.
Yeah, I think that for a long time, the relationship there seemed like Archie really saw something, as you said, in Devonte, but also saw him as the most frustrating player on the team because he couldn't get him to perform to the level he knew he was capable of consistently. There was no consistency. That was Devonte's problem. It wasn't a lack of talent. It wasn't a lack of, some degree, a lack of focus, but it was consistency. He just wasn't consistent. You didn't know who you were getting from game to game. We've seen that with IU players, some IU players recently who, for the first couple of years were guys you couldn't rely on. And then all of a sudden they turned it around. Troy Williams was that way. The second half of his final year, that was a guy who was so key to the team's success. I think that with Devonte, reading that article by Dustin Dopirek, and if you guys haven't read it, go read it. The Athletic. It was fantastic. It was such a really interesting insight into a player we haven't had that deep a look into during his time at IU, and you're just kind of guessing what his motivations are and what made him tick and what made him inconsistent and things like that. We really never got to look at that, and I think that piece really helped me understand who Devonte Green was, and I think that suspension last year really focused him because I think that he realized that basketball could be taken away from him for the first time in his life. He realized, hey, this is something that matters to me and it's gone right now temporarily. And coincidentally, he came back and he started playing much better and much more consistently. And he just seemed to finally fall and settle into a role. As you said, Jerod, there was a stretch at the end of the year last year where he was amazing at times. And, I don't think you're going to get that every game from Devonte Green. I'm not expecting that every game, but there needs to be some level of, just something he contributes every game, and there needs to be some level he can hit, like a baseline level he can hit. And if you can get that from him and it's high enough that it helps the team, that's what's going to be key this year. And maybe they feel that's definitely coming and that he knows that now. And I think that's why you see him get voted captain. But he's always been a popular player on the team, regardless of what's been going on. I know he and Deron Davis are really close, and it's not surprising to me that he got named captain after the way he finished last year and all the positives we heard this offseason.
Yeah, and also just another great example of why give us access to these guys. Let us get to know them. The article that Eddie Cotton did on Devonte last year that really talked about his backstory, his upbringing. It helps make these guys three-dimensional human beings instead of just two-dimensional guys we watch on the screen of the court. And it makes the fan experience better, and I think it allows fans to empathize with these guys more and get on their side, as opposed to just going off only what you see on the court. I think that's so important. So anyway,
just one quick thing on that. I mean, I think when you look at what everybody's impression of him was on the court was like an overconfident guy, and you read a piece like this and it was almost the exact opposite of how he was feeling when he was out there. So I think it's a good point about giving the access, because it's so easy to kind of read a guy one way on the court, and then really the reality is something entirely different. But Coach had Archie's quote in the chat that Devonte's got a lot of rope. So I think hopefully that speaks well, and they're kind of at a good place in their player-coach relationship at this point, and know what one is expecting of the other.
Just like Ryan's, overconfidence masks debilitating insecurity,
Right. That's my issue.
Okay, so I teased big news. I do have an announcement. So I've kind of been driving the Devonte Green train this offseason. Although I will say I was encouraged to see Brendan Quinn, never one to buy into any Indiana basketball hype at all, had Devonte Green on third team all-conference, which I've kind of been saying, he could be an honorable mention all-conference type guy.
Especially after the way he finished the season. Yeah.
Yeah. So
this is all almost always based on the last thing you saw. That's what those.
Yeah. But nice to see that from Brendan. But here is my announcement. The breaking news. I have accepted the position of president of the Devonte Green fan club. It's been coming all off season long.
That is big news.
I'm gonna, it's one of those things. It makes you, a little bit nervous to fully buy into it. But I'm gonna kind of stake my reputation on this. I really think he's gonna have a big season. I'm buying in. Now I'm gonna ask you guys, because obviously when you do this, my confirmation bias is now automatically gonna lead me to, want to see the good in Devonte. So you guys have to hold me accountable, make sure that my analysis of him is as objective as it needs to be. But I am going to be the president of the Devonte Green fan club. I'm fully bought in. I am ready for this great senior season narrative of Devonte turning it around and having a great senior year. And I want to be at the front of the train driving it. So,
did you get business cards made?
I might.
Yeah.
I might. I need to ask Joel. He's got his business cards for the Al Durham fan club.
Yeah,
but
you're not official till you get business
we haven't had an official fan club on this show in a while. Andy had the Robert Johnson fan club. We haven't really had another one for this season. I'm going Devonte Green fan club. That's it.
All right.
That's my announcement. It's a thing. So
I'll see if I can join one.
I thought you were going to announce that you were wearing a shirt, because many in the chat have been concerned that you were doing this shirtless. So,
oh man, that color of that shirt really does kind of blend in with my skin.
There multiple comments were made, but a couple people expressed some relief when they saw a button, so that they knew that it was so.
Really,
I thought that's what you were going to announce, but both exciting. Either way, we're good with it.
Just trying to make the show a little more appealing to the ladies.
I was going to say, Simply Call After Dark lives up to its name.
Yes. In the chat, Jerod, did you hit your head? I did not. Look, I figure everybody kind of thought this was coming because, I've been obviously very positive about him all offseason. So it just feels like the natural evolution of this offseason. All right, let's talk real quick about Al Durham. We talked about his leadership. The thing I want to talk with you guys about, I think there are two areas where he can really improve. Defensively, he's been good. He's been a very good on-ball defender. I mean, he's an outstanding on-ball defender. The synergy numbers back it up. You can see it with the eye test. He has struggled more in help situations and just kind of defending guys off ball, chasing. He, doesn't recognize screens very well. I feel like this is something that as a junior with more experience, he'll get better at. More strength. I think some of those things are things he'll improve on. And if he can add that to the on-ball defense, he's got a chance to be one of the best defensive guards in the conference. And he can guard bigger guys because of his wingspan. So that's an area that I really look for him to improve. But I think, what Indiana is really going to need from him, obviously, is steadiness at the backup point guard position. And he's been a guy who, he doesn't turn it over a ton. He usually makes good decisions. Not a great creator. He's not a big assist guy, but, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But where I think, Ryan, we really need to see him get back to being Al Durham is driving to the basket. Because what I found interesting looking at his numbers, his offensive rating actually went down from his freshman to his sophomore season. And that's with his three-point shooting going up, and the proportion of three-pointers that he took went up from his freshman year, but his efficiency went down. Why was that? Well, it's because he was really efficient at getting to the free throw line and on two-point field goals as a freshman. He shot 50% from two his freshman year, and his free throw rate was 48.7. As a sophomore, his free throw rate was only 31.3, and a big reason for that when you dig into the numbers is in the pick and roll. As a freshman, in 27 possessions where he kept the ball in the pick and roll, he scored 1.148 points per possession. That's 98th percentile. He got to the free throw line on 37% of those possessions, and his field goal percentage was 61%. Now listen to the numbers from his sophomore year. In 51 possessions, this is pick and roll. He keeps the ball. He's driving. 0.745 points per possession. Got to the free throw line on 9.8% of possessions. His field goal percentage was 35%. A huge drop-off. And, to me, there's a couple reasons for that. One is just a lack of respect from officials. I mean, there were some times Al needed to get more calls.
It was clear.
Hopefully, as a junior who does all the right things that you think refs would like,
he's
he'll
a
get
captain.
more
He's going
calls.
to talk to refs before the game.
Yes.
Things.
But to be fair, he also kind of tries to sell the foul a little bit too much, and his reputation might have caught up with him some. And instead of just going to make the basket, he tried to draw the contact. And to me, that's one of the reasons why, the field goal percentage dropped and the free throw rate dropped. If he can bump those numbers back up, which again, he's stronger, he's going to be more experienced. Hopefully he gets more respect. He seems to function better as a driver, be more comfortable. He seemed to with Romeo off the court last year, so that might open things up for him. I think we could see those numbers go up, and now he projects to be an 11, 12, 13-point scorer based on last year, and that would be an important bump for this team. So, when I look for the things that Al can improve on, that reasonably, you could expect to be better, if he can keep the three-point percentage about the same, even with the line moving back, that to me, Ryan, is where he can really take a big step up because we've already seen it from him. And that would be really big for Indiana offensively.
I think the key too is going to be finishing through contact. It's not so much getting fouled and getting to the line for him. It's ignoring the contact and being able to finish. And with how hard he's been working the offseason in the weight room and obviously working, on his shot and all that stuff and all the work he's been doing, that should be something that he's better at this year because he was still very skinny last year, still, got bumped around a lot. He's a more mature guy now. We haven't seen him, but he should be stronger and be able to finish through that kind of contact. I mean, that to me is the biggest thing, is that last year, a lot of times he did get fouled going up and not get the calls. And I think that, when you're in that position as a guard who's going to be driving a lot, you need to be able to push through that and to get through the contact to the hoop.
Also, good point from Charles in the chat. He did have the hand injury as well, and that could have affected him too. I know it affected his shot, so that might have affected some of his aggressiveness as well. Andy, as you kind of look forward for Al, what are your expectations for him this year?
Yeah, I think the free throw rate's a big one. He actually led IU in free throw shooting last year, which, I mean, given how the team shot, is maybe not the greatest of compliments, but it is. Regardless, he was the best at 74%, and I think, yeah, I mean, you look 50% on twos in his freshman season, and to see that drop, about 4% to the 45.8 range, on not quite double the attempts. Definitely hurt. His 3-point shooting, to your point, offset that. And I think he is going to be a guy who, if the matchup is right, needs to be able to take advantage and try to get to the hoop, and potentially in a spot up situation, really be able to knock down some shots, which he was, a bit more consistent with. The thumb injury certainly played a role down the stretch of his shooting tailing off a little bit. But he was also a guy who could make some shots. So if you're going to play through the post and dump it in and reverse the ball, he's got to be a guy who's there ready to shoot and able to knock it down. And his work ethic from that standpoint is good. And, rebounding, that was another thing that dropped off for him a bit from year to year. Defensive rebound percentage was almost 11% his freshman year, dropped off to, under 7 last year. So I think that's another area where, maybe they don't need that as much with him with the size that they have, but that's been a pretty constant drumbeat from Archie of, having the guards help to rebound and be able to get the ball out and really push the pace. That was something else that Archie said with him. He likes his pace and being able to kind of get out and really push things. And again, for a team that, while we all hope that they're going to be better shooting the ball from the perimeter, the team was really a lot more effective last year when they were able to get some easy baskets in transition. So he's one of the guys that can unlock that part of the offense as well.
Yeah. Look, these two guys, obviously they're captains. They're, 2 of the 4 ball handlers on this team, and they're 2 of the best outside shooters. A lot is going to be expected of Al Durham and Devonte Green. And obviously other guys are going to have to play big too. I mean, Rob Finney is probably going to lead this team in minutes. He has a huge responsibility. We've talked about all the big guys, but I think, we talked about the big guys, Ryan, but I think this team is going to be powered by its backcourt. Like that, I feel like is going to be the engine of this team. And these 2 guys are going to be really important. And I think, with each guy, there's reasons to say maybe he won't be up to this. Devonte, the inconsistency. Al, not the high-profile recruit and still a guy who's limited, with what he can do offensively in certain respects. But I really think when you look at how they've grown, you look at some of the things they do in areas they can improve that are reasonable, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about these 2 guys. And so, we'll see, obviously, when the games start. But I'm excited about the senior year for Devonte Green and the junior year for Al Durham, and we'll see how high they can take this Hoosier team. All righty, coming up in our third segment, as we always do, we will answer your questions. We got a really interesting one about the pack line defense and how the extended three-point line might affect that, and then a bunch of follow-up questions about the name, image, likeness thing. We'll get into both of those things coming up next. All right, so first off, is anybody in the chat mob going to join me in the Devonte Green fan club? And then what about, and by the way, one reason for doing that strategically is you get a guy who's a senior. I'll be a fan club free agent next year, and I might be able to hop on the Armand Franklin bandwagon because I think that bandwagon is going to fill up pretty quickly. He'll be a good long-term fan club investment. Andy, you haven't had one since Robert Johnson left.
Already. I'm already planning your escape route.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
Like 3D chess.
Well, no, I mean, Devonte is going to be around for 1 year, so we're going to have to find someone new.
So it's kind of a low risk proposition. If it doesn't work out, you're not tied to him for any more than
no. It's not. It's not low risk because it's nothing with Devonte is low risk. That's not a phrase I would use to describe Devonte.
It's fair.
So I'm like I said, I'm kind of putting my reputation out here on that one. But it's not long term, because Armand is moving out there.
It needs to, yeah. So it needs to happen organically. I wasn't gonna right after the Robert Johnson thing just go out and feel like you had to pick somebody else.
It does have to happen organically.
You want to cheat?
I feel like the way that it happens is when you are slightly more consistently enthusiastic about a guy than logic or evidence might dictate. And I feel I feel like most of what I've said about Devonte this offseason has been very sound and logical. But when you're
calling it,
but when you're as consistently effusive about a guy who's been so inconsistent, it can stretch to that next level. So that's why I felt like it made sense.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how the Robert Johnson thing started. It just kind of happened organically. Like you were always.
I honestly don't remember. I think that the 1 year when he was, I don't know that it was his freshman year. I think it was his sophomore year that it
sophomore year
began, where he just played well in the complimentary role. Sometimes you just know, man. What are you gonna do?
Okay. There's a lot of people in the Rob Finney fan club, and that's fair. I mean, we could all kind of see that, yeah. But Trey Galloway, there'll definitely be a Trey Galloway fan club.
Yes.
All right, I got a couple who are in for Devonte. Good, strength in numbers. Strength in numbers. All right, so let's do. We're not going to be able to get to all of these questions probably. Let's do.
How much time we got left?
First, we have 8 minutes.
Which one do we have? Which one do you want to do first?
I want to do Anthony's. I think that's interesting.
Sure.
Okay.
About the pack line, and then
Yeah, I saw that one.
we just talked about Devonte and Al, so we don't need to answer that one. Maybe. Okay, Kathy asked about the new NBA developmental league. Was there I didn't see this. I don't know anything about it.
No,
was there? There was something else that they announced, but I don't know what it is. So I need to.
I don't know anything about it. So let's save that one, and maybe we can look into it more.
All right, so we'll do Patrick's question. Then we'll do Patrick and James questions and see how many which ones of those we can get to. But we'll do Patrick's first. Okay. Arizona Hoosier asks, can we only belong to one fan club? I think that's generally...
Yeah,
you can only be... I mean, obviously, we're all in everybody's fan club, kind of technically, because we're IU fans. But it's the guy that you are just irrationally attached to. That's what I would say. That's what the fan club is. Ken says Geronimo will be a fun fan club next year, too. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Geronimo. What a name, man. What a name. All right. Let's get into this. Here we go.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason. And after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866. Or go to assemblycall.com. Time now for the mailbag. All of these questions submitted in our private IU basketball discussion community, assemblycall.com/community, which you should definitely consider joining with the season coming right up here. So look, a couple interesting questions here. This one from Anthony. He says, I have run the pack line D for years coaching my junior high team, and I appreciate the benefits the system provides when it's run correctly. Closing out three-point shooters well is a key to this system's success. All IU fans nodding in agreement. How do you think the deeper three-point line creating longer closeouts will impact teams running the pack line, and will it be a detriment to an IU team that must take another step forward with their defense this year if they hope to reach the NCAA tournament? I know, Andy, we talked about this earlier in the offseason when we addressed the longer three-point line, but maybe it's a good time to kind of refresh this conversation. How do you expect that to impact Indiana and maybe teams running the pack line generally?
I don't know that it just doesn't feel to me like the difference is enough to really.
No, it's
matter.
not like it's 3. It's not like it's 5 feet. You know.
Yeah,
but Anthony's defense, I mean, how much longer is it? It's a foot longer, right?
It's about a foot. Yeah.
I mean,
I get that. I get that it's different. I feel like I keep going back to like as far behind the line as it feels like most guys are shooting. I just don't know in that regard. So not necessarily that the line isn't different, but where guys may actually be like setting up. I don't know that part is that different. So I tend to not read too much into what that might look like, but maybe I'm underselling it.
No, I actually agree with you. I think that it'll probably be any difference to the defense will probably be offset by the fact that guys will be shooting from a longer distance and percentages might go down a little bit. So I think those things will offset each other because it's not that far. And for the most part, guys are shooting it deeper these days anyway. I mean, how often do we say, oh man, NBA 3 or, even, a deep pull up. So I don't think it'll have that big an impact. Look, if they were moving it back 4 feet, then that's something we could discuss, but I just don't think it's that big a difference. I think it's big enough difference that you'll see a slight downward trend in percentages. But I don't think it's going to be monumental and it's going to be a 3-year adjustment period and all that. I really don't think so.
Do you think it is at all? Because as Coach says in the chat, deeper line means longer closeouts for all defenses, not just the pack line.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think there's anything about the pack line that would make it maybe just like a tick more difficult for them, or a tick longer to get out there? Just because we've already seen that that's been an issue at times for pack line defenses, even though we've all looked at the stats and that narrative is a little bit overblown.
If they're disciplined, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's, it might look bad on one pack line defense but that's going to be if the players aren't disciplined and aren't, maybe the first year, as we've talked about, the third year in the pack line defense is usually a vast improvement everywhere on the team. If you're in the first year of it and you've never run it before, it might be more glaring than not, but I don't think it's going to be something that IU is going to have to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, do you just take, all right, if the line's a foot further back, do you split the difference and say, hey, I'm going to set up to cut off driving lanes 6 inches further out? And to me, that just doesn't seem like it ends up being a meaningful difference. But I guess time will tell. I don't necessarily feel like, I'm trying to think back to the NIT games last year. I didn't necessarily feel like IU was any better or worse at, getting to shooters in those scenarios there. And that was really what it would be. I think if you get, it's just not a big enough difference. If you get sucked too far in, you're going to get sucked too far in if it's, a foot further out otherwise. So I think if you stick with the principles of what you're doing and really, kind of know where you're, as coach kind of put it in the thing, the actual pack line itself, if you stick to where you're supposed to be there, I don't know that it makes a huge difference.
And as he said, pack line gives up 3 when there are bad help decisions, just like any other defense. And that's really the key, and that's not going to be affected by the length of the 3-point line. So great question, Anthony. Appreciate that. From Patrick, and this gets back to the conversation about that California bill that's going to allow scholarship athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness, or at least to not be prohibited from doing so. Do you think IU players will benefit more or less than the top programs when the players can get paid for name and likeness? Brian, what do you think?
I think I would consider IU a top program as far as visibility goes. So I would say they're probably going to, players at IU are probably going to do very well. Cause I mean, especially if it's mostly a local thing and we don't see as many national ads. Obviously if you're a 5-star Zion Williamson type, you're going to get paid big bucks nationally. But if you are, insanely visible in the state of Indiana as IU basketball players are, you're going to have plenty of opportunities there to do statewide campaigns and all that stuff for advertising. So I think IU players would do very well under that system, just because of how visible Indiana basketball is in the state of Indiana and even the surrounding states a little bit. They're in a big time basketball conference in the Big Ten. So then maybe even more of a reach.
Yeah, obviously not as much as like a Duke or a Kentucky right now or a North Carolina,
Yeah,
but with the potential to get up there, if they can actually.
But Duke and Kentucky, you got to remember,
the brand is strong.
You got to remember with Duke and Kentucky, it's not just like they have visible programs. They're also bringing in guys who are going to be top 5 picks in the NBA draft, and that's why they're getting so much exposure. I mean, Zion Williamson didn't get all that attention just because he went to Duke. That had something to do with it. He got all that attention because we've been watching Zion Williamson play high school games for 3 years and, see his insane athleticism and things like that. Wherever
Romeo would have made pretty good money.
Yeah. So
it's kind of
really,
it's like a chicken and egg argument, right? Is it really the fact that you went to Duke or the fact that you're a 5-star? I would lean more toward what Ryan said, and the fact that if you're a 5-star, you're on mock drafts, you're all over all these things. Like those are the ones that people are going to want to throw things after. Now, do you go to Duke because they've had a bunch of other guys do that? Maybe you do, but I don't know that in and of itself is a factor. But we all know the passion for IU. We know that there's, all these theories about, boosters going to throw a bunch of money at somebody to do whatever. There are boosters at IU with money, just like there are at a lot of other places that if they really wanted to say, hey, go rep my business for X amount, then
and I guess my point would be Zion Williamson could have gone to South Carolina and he would have been he would have been enormous last year. Maybe going to Duke elevates that a little bit because he's in the national title conversation, all that. But wherever he went, he was going to be a superstar.
Yep.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right. Well, that is going to have to do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you again Saturday after Hoosier Hysteria. Until then,
take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out. All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Nice.
We good?
We are good.
You should really find Jeremiah April on Cameo. Get him to say, "I never miss a turnaround jumper" or an episode. That's a deep.
If he was on there, that would be that's a deep cut.
That is a deep cut, folks.
From a Mississippi Valley State postgame show.
You would have had to have been around a long time watching.
I would love to go back and find that and get that drop. I don't know. I'm sure I have it somewhere. That'd be once I have a lot of extra time someday. I'll go do that. Good stuff, man. Cool. So Hoosier Hysteria. Looking forward to seeing how Jerome Hunter looks out there.
What time does it start?
It starts at 4 Eastern.
Okay, so 1 o'clock here. Good. That will make me more available, so that's a positive.
Good.
I mean, for those that like me. If you don't, that's a real negative.
You dumbass.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're gonna use that one a lot. Any fun stories?
My 21 hours of flying time to Italy. That was fun. So for those who don't know, last Thursday at 6 a.m. I flew to Dallas. I was in the same town as Jerod.
You were in Dallas and you didn't let me know?
Well, I was at the airport, Jerod.
Hey, how long were you there?
Like
say a short time. Say a short time. He's gonna be pissed. Say a short time.
On the way there, it was like an hour. I had like an hour layover, which is enough time to get on the whatever it's called, the tram to get to your new place. On the way back, I had a couple hours, but I had to go through customs, recheck my bag, like all that stuff. So I really didn't have much time. Sorry, Jerod. You weren't going to bust through security to come hang out with me,
There's nothing he'd rather do than hang out at like an airport Chili's with you. So how dare you?
Jerod, I will say, I almost wound up having to stay overnight because they swapped our plane out on the way back. I would have called you if that had happened, but it didn't happen. They wound up putting us on another plane. So, sorry, buddy. But really, then I
really dodged a bullet on that.
Yeah, if I desperately needed you to avoid staying in a hotel and paying money, I would have called you.
Well, no, I would have stayed in the hotel. I just would have gotten dinner with you or something.
Just kidding.
There's a Hyatt at the Dallas airport, right?
Yeah,
I would have done that and charged the airline for it. But yeah, so I flew to Dallas, then got on a plane and went Dallas to Rome, in coach. I'm a big guy, so coach it's not great for 11 hours. And it was pretty miserable, but landed in Rome at 6 a.m. It's Italy time. Couldn't sleep the whole way because I was just wildly uncomfortable. So I watched like 9 movies. Got to Rome. My sister and brother-in-law flew in from New York. We met there. They landed about a half hour after I did. Drove up to Umbria, where my parents stay, and surprised my mom for her 70th birthday. That was Friday morning. We're there. Had a big birthday party for my mom Friday night. We're there Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, my brother-in-law and I woke up at 3:30 in the morning and drove to Rome, which is like a 2.5-hour drive. Got on a plane and flew all the way back. So it was like 3 days worth of Italy. And the plane ride on the way back was a rough one too. It was 11 hours of no sleep or anything. Then I got to Dallas, had to do all that stuff and come in. So yeah, it was rough. And then, so I got back on Monday late. Tuesday I worked, and then Wednesday I had to started a 3-day guest hosting stint on the morning show. So I have had no sleep for about the last week. It's been pretty bad. So I'm enjoying that this show is over and then I can finish my work tonight and go to bed.
We're going to start a new segment instead of AC After Dark. First World Problems with Ryan Phillips.
Oh, it's absolutely first world problems. Absolutely. But oh my gosh, man. I'm just I am miserably tired though. I will say that. It was one of those things that seemed like a really good idea when we were planning it. And then, man, yeah, this has been rough, but it all worked out.
It's for your mom.
Surprised. Yeah. They're good people, right, Jerod?
How long until that debt is paid?
Seriously.
That starts to pay it off right there.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm starting.
Am I going to be paying for that forever, Jerod?
I'm starting to chip away. But it wasn't, it wasn't like it was really funny because people were like, oh, well, at least you got to like sightsee or whatever. It's like there was not much sightseeing going on. It was like such a like whip around trip that we didn't really do much. We just hung out, which was fun, but we were just hanging out as a family. But it was.
Now, when was your mom going to be back in San Diego? The funny part about this is your parents live in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
You could have done this in San Diego, so everybody flew to Italy.
Yeah, well, they're not back until like mid-October. They usually like, I mean, for a long time they were going for 6 months a year, like two stints of 3 months. They've shortened it a little now, but this time they're there for like 5 weeks. And then for my dad's 75th. We flew out and surprised him. So for mom's 70th, we figured, okay, we got to do that too. We got to even
things out. You don't want to be jealous.
So, so that was my last week. So that's why I wasn't on the show last week, as you announced on Twitter. It was also very, very hard getting nobody to say anything, but we pulled it off.
Yeah, well, we did. Okay, but I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 shows prior. Was it? I think it was just me. Oh no, yeah, it was the show that Dylan was on. It was me and Coach and Dylan. And at the very end, like right now, basically all the show's over. No one's really listening. Coach said something like, Ryan. I think we were talking about who's going to be on the next show, and he's like, yeah, Ryan's going to be out. I was like, no, I think Ryan's going to be here. And he's like, no, I think he's going to be out. No, he's going to be here. He's going to be on the show.
Coach, he's gonna be here.
I kind of felt bad. I think that's the first time I've ever lied to the assembly call audience, but it was to protect. To protect your secret. For all the people that are watching 60 minutes into our show where we're bantering about nothing.
We were at dinner a few weeks before they left to go to Italy because they've been there since beginning of September, and Madeline said something about, oh, well, you're going to be flying in like 2 weeks or something like that. And I was like, I'm not going to be flying in 2 weeks. She's like, well, you have flights, don't you? And I'm like, nope, I don't. And she was like,
you dumbass.
Right, don't. Yeah. Oh yeah. I thought she blew it. I thought we played it off. We played it off pretty well, but I was like, no, I don't have flights.
Which always looks real natural when you're.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. And I
could have just planned like a separate fake trip someplace else that you could have been like, I was going to go to.
And I don't overreact to anything. So, of course.
Not at all. All right, good stuff, guys. Gents. I'll see you Saturday. Andy, we'll see you next Thursday. And then I guess for the next few shows.
How long was Hoosier Hysteria last year? It's like an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, I
that
think
feels about right.
Hour and a half.
It was a little shorter last year, I think.
It was snappier, so I'm hoping that it's like that again.
Yeah, it was definitely less than 2 hours last year because I think Jerod, you went last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ryan, we got on, and then Jerod, I think you called in from there. I feel like it was relatively short because I remember feeling like I was kind of scrambling to like get started because I assumed that it was going to run longer, but
yeah.
Cool.
So, and I guess for future Thursday shows, we can do the rest of the individual player previews and.
Yeah, we may just have to kind of pair up guys like we did for this one.
Yeah, maybe position group. Do it by like position groups.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody. We will see you Saturday after Hoosier Hysteria.
Later, guys.
Sounds good.
Guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
You dumbass.